Single dad saved his drunk CEO, but what she did in her room changed everything. A red dress, a glittering ballroom, a CEO everyone feared. By midnight, she was alone, and the only person who stepped toward her was the quiet single dad with a glass of water in his hand. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Her red dress shimmered under the chandelier light like liquid fire. Every step Isabelle Rowan took felt rehearsed, not fake, but controlled, deliberate, a performance she had perfected over years of ruling boardrooms and bending outcomes to her will. People didn't just notice her. They adjusted themselves because of her. Conversations dipped when she walked past. Men straightened their ties. Women glanced down at their own gowns, measuring themselves against her presence. She wasn't just at the gala. She was a gala. The ballroom itself looked like money had decided to dress up for the night. Crystal chandeliers, mirrored walls, champagne towers that sparkled every time someone laughed too loudly. A jazz band in the corner stitched golden notes through the air. Executives pretended to enjoy it. But for most of them, tonight wasn't about joy. It was about survival. One wrong word to Isabelle Rowan could stall promotion for years. One well-timed compliment might buy you a seat at the table. Her scarlet gown moved like a flame across marble. When she smiled, people leaned in. When she laughed, people laughed with her. Even when there was nothing funny at all. Everything about her was precise, calculated, untouchable, until the champagne started catching up. At first, it was nothing, a tiny misstep disguised as a graceful pivot. A glass lifted just a little too quickly, bubbles spilling over onto her wrist. The kind of thing people would normally notice, if they wanted to notice, but no one did, because Isabelle Rowan wasn't supposed to falter. Not here, not ever. Yet as the hours dragged on, the flame of her dress looked less like power and more like exhaustion flickering at the edges. Her heels, usually a metronome of confidence, started to miss a beat. Her laughter sharpened. Her eyes glazed just a little too long between blinks. By midnight, the woman who could reshape careers with a single sentence was standing at the edge of the ballroom, one hand on the door frame. Breathing like the marble was the only thing keeping her upright. For the first time in a very, very long time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked human. At the far edge of the ballroom, half in shadow, stood Daniel Archer, 32, suit pressed but plain, shoes polished but worn at the edges. While everyone else floated from circle to circle with champagne in hand, Daniel held one thing, a simple glass of water. He wasn't shy. He just didn't belong to this world. His life didn't revolve around promotions, networking, or impressing people who forget his name by morning. His world belonged to a 10-year-old girl named Maddie, who, right now, was asleep under a faded quilt his late wife had sewn. To everyone else, this gala was an opportunity. To Daniel, it was a line in his contract and a night he'd rather be reading a bedtime story. He hadn't always felt this way. There was a time when he'd toast, drink, laugh, and let the night blur. Before that phone call, before the steady hum of the refrigerator and the sound of rain against the window were interrupted by a stranger's voice. There's been an accident. A drunk driver. We're so sorry. Emily's laughter, the kind that filled a room before she even walked in, disappeared on wet pavement and headlights. Since then, alcohol wasn't fun to him. It was a loaded weapon people shook in the air and called celebration. So he stopped. Completely. Not because he doubted himself, but because Maddie deserved a father who would always show up steady, clear, and alive. He watched the ballroom quietly. Sequins. Forced laughter. Deals being made with fake smiles. And through it all, his gaze kept drifting back to the woman in red. To everyone else, she was a symbol. Power in heels. To Daniel, she was something else. A person standing on a slope he knew too well. He watched her glass refill again and again, watched her smile tighten, watched her balance start to slip. The crowd admired her fire. Daniel saw the smoke. He remembered umbrellas at a graveside, rain sliding off black coats like endless tears. Holding Maddie, barely a year old, while people whispered apologies that did nothing to stitch his life back together. He had promised that day. No bottle. No toast. No. Just one more drink would ever come near destroying his daughter's world again. Now he stood at the edge of a glittering room, holding water in his hand, watching a woman drift toward the same cliff that had shattered his life. And even though he didn't pity her, he couldn't look away. By the time the music thinned and the champagne went flat, the ballroom had lost its sparkle. What had started as a storm of laughter and clinking crystal had become a slow exodus of people slipping toward the exit before anything messy could happen. The chandeliers still burned, the marble still shone, but the bravado was gone. In the middle of it all, Isabelle remained. Her assistants? Gone. Her driver? Missing. Her entourage? Vanished the second it looked inconvenient to stay. She raised her glass one last time. It trembled. Her laugh came out wrong, sharp, then cut off entirely. When she pushed away from the wall and walked toward the grand doors, her stride was off, not the lethal rhythm she usually carried, but the uneven, careful steps of someone trying not to fall. Her hand slid along the doorframe. People saw. Of course they did. But heads turned quickly. A few voices rose louder. Fake laughter swelling to cover what no one wanted to acknowledge. Because to admit the queen was wobbling was to admit the throne was human, too. And no one wanted to take that risk. No one except the man at the edge. Daniel had already turned slightly toward the exit. Empty glass resting on a tray beside him. He should have left. No one would have blamed him. But when he saw her fingers grip the marble like it was an anchor, something inside him refused to walk away. He knew too well what it looked like when people turned their backs. He'd lived in the aftermath of it. He straightened, smoothed his jacket, and crossed the distance between them. "Ma'am," he said quietly, so his voice wouldn't carry across the hall. "Do you need a ride?" Isabelle turned. Her pupils took a second too long to focus on him. Recognition flickered across her face. Employee, not equal. She squinted. "Archer," she slurred, using his last name like a shield. Then, with a bitter little twist of her mouth, "Right, the single dad." Daniel didn't flinch. He just nodded once. "Yes, ma'am. Let me drive you home. It's late. It's not safe." Her pride rose, even to the haze of alcohol. "I don't need your help. I have drivers. Cars. Everything." She waved vaguely toward the valet area, where no one was left but a half-asleep attendant stacking keys. "Not tonight. You don't," Daniel replied, voice still calm. "No judgment. Just fact. Please, trust me." For a long moment, she stared at him. Isabelle Rowan was used to people obeying her, fearing her, flattering her. She wasn't used to a man looking her in the eye, drunk or not, and asking her to trust him. The silence stretched like a test. Then she sighed, the fight draining out of her shoulders. Her hand slipped from the marble. Without another protest, she let him guide her forward. Her steps were unsteady, but steadier beside him. The chandeliers above watched their slow procession. The queen of the room leaning on the quiet man no one had noticed all night. For once, her power didn't live in sharp words or flawless posture. It lived in the courage to let someone see her break. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap, cold, sharp, carrying the faint smell of rain and city. Her heels clicked against the stone until she reached his car. Not a town car, not a sleek company vehicle. Just a simple sedan, a little older, a little scratched, clean in the way of someone who took care of what little they had. The leather was worn, the dashboard slightly faded. A cheap pine air freshener hung from a mirror. He opened the passenger door. Careful. She sank into the seat, her gown spilling like spilled paint across the plain fabric. The door shut with a soft thud. The sound felt final, like a curtain falling. Daniel got on his side, buckled up, then glanced over. "You want yours on," he said. Somewhere inside, the CEO in her bristled at being told anything, but her fingers still found the seatbelt and clicked into place. They pulled away from the hotel. The lights of the gala shrank in the rear-view mirror, swallowed by the darker, quieter streets ahead. For a while, there was only the hum of the engine. No small talk, no fake politeness. Just neon smears on the windows and the faint rattle of coins in the cup holder. Then Isabelle spoke. Not to him, not really. More to the window. "Everyone thinks success is glamorous," she murmured. "That power makes you invincible." A humorless laugh caught in her throat. "They don't see me. They see the title, the CO, the brand." Daniel let a few seconds pass. "I think everyone has their battles," he said finally. His voice was low, steady. Some just hide them better than others. Her gaze slid from the glass to his profile. "And what's yours, Archer?" He hesitated, not because he was shy, but because opening that door always hurt. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I lost my wife," he said quietly. "Drunk driver. Since then, my battle is making sure my daughter grows up safe, with someone who won't let her down." The words cut through the champagne fog sharper than caffeine. Isabelle blinked. For the first time that night, she wasn't thinking about herself. She wasn't thinking about the board, the shareholders, the headlines. She was thinking about a little girl named Maddie and a man who had every reason to hate the very thing she'd been drowning herself in all evening. "And you just carry that alone?" she asked softly. "No," he shook his head once. "I carry it for her. It stopped being about me a long time ago." Silence settled again, but it had changed. Less empty, more honest. The city lights stretched ahead in ribbons of red and gold. Inside that modest sedan, two worlds that never should have touched sat 3 feet apart, sharing the same fragile truth. Neither of them was as invincible as they pretended to be. Her penthouse was everything his apartment wasn't. Glass walls, perfect symmetry, skyline spread out like spilled diamonds. It screamed power and loneliness. The elevator door slid open, and Daniel helped her out, his arm firm but respectful under hers. The concierge looked up, froze, then deliberately looked away. Even here, people knew better than to comment when the queen came home leaning on someone. Inside, Daniel didn't gawk at the view, didn't comment on the art, didn't mentally calculate the cost of the rug his shoes were touching. He just guided her gently to a white sofa. "Sit," he said quietly. She sank down, exhaling as though the night had finally caught up to her. He walked to the kitchen, found a crystal glass, filled it with water, and set on the low table in front of her. "You'll feel better after this," he murmured. Her eyes lifted to his face, heavy but searching. "Why are you helping me?" she rasped. "You could have left. You could laugh about this tomorrow with everyone else." Daniel didn't smile. "Because I know what it's like when no one's there," he said simply. No speech, no drama, just that. Something cracked inside her chest. She didn't show it, not fully, but she felt it. He didn't wait for a thank you. "Good night, ma'am," he added gently. Then he turned, walked to the door, and closed it behind him with the same care he had shown all night. Not slamming, not sneaking, just leaving her in peace. Isabelle stared at the water. The glass sat in front of her, condensation forming a faint ring. the only proof the night had happened at all. No one in her world did anything for her without calculating what it would cost or what they might gain. No one except him. For the first time in years, she realized tonight she hadn't been alone. Morning hit too bright. Sunlight flooded the penthouse, slicing through the curtains with the kind of cruelty only hangovers understood. Isabelle groaned, lifting a hand to her temple. Bits of last night surfaced in fragments. The laughter that had turned sharp. The stumble at the ballroom doors. A steady voice asking, "Do you need a ride?" Daniel Archer. Her gaze drifted to the coffee table. The crystal glass was still there. Half a ring of dried condensation sat beneath it, like a quiet fingerprint. He hadn't needed anything from her. He hadn't tried to impress her. He hadn't taken a single photo, made a single joke, or used a single moment against her. He just helped. A flicker of shame burned in her chest. Isabelle Rowan did not stumble. She did not lean on employees. She did not wake up with evidence of her weakness staring back at her. And yet, tangled up with the shame was something unfamiliar. Gratitude. Real, raw gratitude that didn't care about titles or power. He had seen her at her worst, and still chose to protect her dignity. That was new. Rowan Industries moved like a machine the next morning. Glass doors sliding, heels clicking, phones buzzing with numbers and deadlines. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside the corner office, everything had. Isabelle's desk was as immaculate as ever, her eyes as sharp, but underneath there was a decision already made. She pressed the intercom. Send an Archer. The assistant paused for half a second, just enough to show surprise, then replied, "Right away, Ms. Rowan." Daniel walked in a minute later, shoulders straight, expression careful. "You asked for me, ma'am," he said, closing the door behind him. He looked like a man prepared for a problem. Maybe a complaint about the night. Maybe a warning to never mention it. Instead, she said 3 words he never expected to hear from her. "Thank you for last night." He blinked once, surprised, then nodded, just doing the right thing. "No," she replied quietly, leaning forward. "It was more than that." Her voice softened, just enough that if anyone outside had heard it, they wouldn't have believed it belonged to her. "You reminded me that kindness is rarer than power," she said. "You didn't take advantage. You didn't gossip. You respected me when I couldn't respect myself." The room went still. For a second, Daniel didn't know where to put his hands. He just bowed his head slightly. "You're welcome," he said simply. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The change started small. In the next strategy meeting, while executives tripped over themselves to impress her, Isabelle did something she had never done before. She turned her chair slightly toward him. "Archer," she said suddenly, cutting through the noise, "what do you think?" The room went quiet. All eyes shifted to the man who usually sat near the end of the table, taking notes and watching numbers. Daniel cleared his throat. He didn't dress up his answer, didn't use buzzwords or flattery. He just spoke. Plain, honest, practical. Isabelle listened. Really listened. She even nodded once, then adjusted the plan based on a suggestion. Whispers started the same day. Why is she listening to him? What did he do? Is he getting promoted? Daniel ignored them. He still left at 5, still rushed home to Maddie, still burned freezer pizza, and overdid the voices in bedtime stories. But something had changed for him, too. He wasn't invisible anymore. Trust didn't crash into them all at once. It arrived quietly, in fragments. A question here, a shared silence there. One morning, mid-briefing, Isabelle asked, "How's Maddie?" The room froze for half a second. Daniel did too. He wasn't used to people at work caring about the part of his life that mattered most. But her face didn't carry judgment or curiosity for gossip, just interest. "She's good," he said slowly. "We're working our way through the same bedtime book for the 100th time." "Which one?" Isabelle asked. Someone dropped a pen outside her office. He answered. She smiled, not the polished smile she used in public, but something smaller, real. Days turned into weeks. She asked about school pickups. He admitted the chaos. She didn't roll her eyes or dismiss it. She listened. In return, he started seeing things he'd missed about her. How she stayed late, not always because of ambition, but because going home to silence sometimes hurt more than paperwork. How her gaze lingered on the city at night, as if it was the only thing big enough to hold the weight she carried. How the woman everyone feared still had moments where her shoulders looked tired. He saw more than a CEO. He saw a woman who had built walls so high, she'd almost forgotten there was a person inside them. And slowly, carefully, she was letting him step through the gate. One evening, as the sky over Chicago melted into shades of copper and violet, Isabelle closed her office and found Daniel collecting his things. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't an order. It almost sounded like a request. They stepped outside into the city's hum. No driver, no security, no tinted car waiting. Just two people walking. They moved side by side down the sidewalk, the glow of skyscrapers warming the glass around them. At first, there were no words. They didn't need them. The world around them was loud. Traffic, horns, fragmented conversations from passing strangers. But between them, there was quiet. At the crosswalk, their hands brushed. Just barely. An accident. Daniel pulled back on instinct. Years of grief had made him cautious with contact, with hope, with anything that might demand more of his heart. Then Isabelle's fingers reached for his again. This time deliberately. Her hand slipped into his, not possessive, not desperate. Just there. His step slowed for half a beat. She didn't look at him. He didn't pull away. They crossed the street like that. Two people who, not that long ago, would have described themselves with one word. Alone. Now. Their fingers laced together like it was the most natural thing in the world. No grand declarations. No dramatic promises. Just a quiet decision. You don't have to walk this part by yourself. At the corner, he glanced over. For maybe the first time since he'd met her, Isabelle wasn't wearing her mask. No CEO expression. No hard edges. Just soft, steady eyes that held something new. A beginning. In the end, this wasn't a story about a boss and an employee. It wasn't about money or power or office politics. It was about one simple moment. A single dad holding a glass of water in a ballroom full of champagne and choosing not to turn away. Daniel didn't save Isabelle's reputation for a raise. He didn't drive her home for leverage. He didn't leave water by her side for praise. He did it because he knew what it felt like to be alone when everything was falling apart. And that kind of kindness, the kind that expects nothing back, changes people. It changed her. The next day, she didn't pretend to forget. She didn't hide behind power or embarrassment. She looked him in the eye, said thank you, and let her life bend just a little towards something softer. This story carries a quiet truth. In a world obsessed with titles, image, and success, the most powerful thing you can offer someone isn't money or advice or judgment. It's a steady hand when they're about to fall. We all wear armor. We all hide behind something, a job, a personality, a joke, a drink. But underneath it, every one of us is just human, needing one person who won't look away. If this story touched something in you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment of unexpected kindness that changed your path, even a little? And share where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Globe showing Europe, Africa. If heartwarming, emotional journeys like this move you, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss the next story of hurt, healing, and second chances.